Director of Council Relations on the Toronto Youth Cabinet, the official youth advisory body to the City of Toronto. As a community advocate and data enthusiast, she constantly explores avenues to leverage digital technology and data visualization to promote civic engagement. Awesome. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Oh, so I use this mic instead of this one at the podium?
I don't know if the podium was working.
Oh, yeah, it's not working, it's a fake one. So, okay, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has had a wonderful Canada Day celebration and a relaxing weekend. My name is Lily, and I am honored to be here tonight to present to you the dashboard that I've built, the Toronto City Wards and Councillors dashboard. So that's my Twitter handle right there, and I guess I will be using it. Sorry, I've actually got it perfect. Let me try this. Great. By the way, it's my first time at Sandbox. This place is awesome. Okay, so a little bit about me. So I think you already sufficiently introduced my background, but I'm an analyst with Accenture, and I work in the field of digital consulting and IT consulting. Outside of work, I am also involved with the Toronto Youth Cabinet. We are the City of Toronto's official youth advisory body, and as an advocacy group, we work with city councillors, city staff, nonprofits, and grassroots around the city to promote the development of an equitable and youth-friendly Toronto for all youths. And we actively seek to engage youths in dialogues around current issues in the city. So I would like to put forth a disclaimer that today I am speaking as an independent and not on behalf of any organization. So without further ado, let's talk about the dashboard. So before I unveil the dashboard to all of you, I would like to see a show of hands. How many of you know who your city councillor is? Raise your hand. Okay, wow. I guess, sorry, can you keep your hand up for a second? Okay, great. That's around half, 40% people. Great. Thank you very much. So I guess this is sort of a distorted sample right here, considering that you're probably already civic-minded to begin with to come to civic tech. But my point here is that not everyone knows who your city councillor is, right? And how many of you are familiar with the portfolio of your city councillor? You know what he or she is responsible for? No idea. Oh, you do? Oh, you live in Niagara Falls. Oh, great. So what do you think is the portfolio of the city councillor?
But she's in trouble.
Oh, she's in trouble. Okay, that's all he knows. Okay, great. Okay, great. So if you, okay, I can move around a little bit, right? So if you see a pothole like down the street, would you report that to your city councillor? No idea. What about if you want to talk about transit or property taxes? What about stormwater management? What about if you want to see a new park constructed in your area instead of more condos? Would you address those issues to your city councillors? Yes. What about healthcare, education system, immigration? Would you still go to your city councillor for that? No. Okay. Excellent. So actually, most people have a very hard time discerning what falls under municipal jurisdiction versus provincial and federal jurisdiction. And it's important to make that distinction because we want to make sure that the correct issue is addressed to the right level of government so that they actually have the power to make those changes that you want to make. So your city councillor is responsible for all local affairs that pretty much touch every aspect of your life. That includes the city's infrastructure, roads, transit within the city, parks, licenses, police services, Parks and Recreation, I already said that, also buildings, and etc. A lot of important things. So it's important to find out who the city councillor is. Now, I built the dashboard during a weekend back in May, and I built it with the original intention of using it internally within the Toronto Youth Cabinet to make information more accessible and transparent for youths so that they can easily find out which ward they live in, as well as who their city councillor is. But then I realized that this dashboard can actually be used to promote civic engagement in a broader context. So here I am sharing it with all of you. And now, finally, without further ado, this is the dashboard. Okay, great. So a dashboard is an interactive visualization aggregating data from different sources. And so here we see that in the top left corner, we have a Toronto wards map showing you all the different wards, and these are the municipal divisions of the city. And if you hover on any one ward, you will see that there's a tooltip that pops up showing you information such as the ward number, the name of the ward, as well as which councillor it is. So in this case, it's ward number 25, Down Valley West, Councillor Robinson. Okay, great. Here you see a very colorful band with different segments. So this shows you the population. Right now, because no ward is selected, this is showing you the total population in the city of Toronto. Keep in mind that this is data taken from the 2011 census. So if you hover on any specific segment, it actually shows you a specific age cohort. So in this case, this orange, this beige segment right here is, 15 to 19 years old, which is around 150K. And to the bottom right corner, we actually have a packed bubbles showing you the most common, like top 5 commonly spoken languages in the city of Toronto. Here, and if you hover on any single bubble, you'll see that language. So here is Mandarin. There's around 40K speakers in Toronto. So now let's try selecting a councillor using that drop down up there. So let's choose Anna Bila. So now the dashboard updates to show you the information of Councillor Bila and her ward. So Councillor Anna Bila is the councillor of Ward 18 Davenport. And the map updates to show you that this is the boundaries for her ward. And once again, the population updates to show you the total population of her ward. In this case, it's around 45K, and there's around 5,000 people between the ages of 25 to 29. Oh, but before I do that, so at the bottom you also see there's you can get a quick glance of stats around her ward. So the average income is around 34K, 29% of the population has a university degree, and it's around 50% renters. And specifically as the Director of Council Relations, I was interested in finding out which committees the councillor sits on, because by law, every councillor has to sit on at least one committee. So in this case, if you hover on the second icon, little house, we see that Councillor Bila sits on the Affordable Housing Committee, and she is the chair and the mayor's designate. Yes, I see you had a question.
You mentioned average income is 34 for that area. Is that essentially averaged across all people that are there, or is it average income per household? Just because that area is not cheap. So.
You're correct. So this is per person, not the average household income. So that 15 plus means ages 15 and above. So out of all the people who are employed, I think that's the average income. This is taken from the National Household Survey. Great. So, yeah, exactly. Davenport is not cheap. So she sits on 6 committees, and if you hover on those icons, you'll see what they mean. And in the bottom right, we see that the language bubble has updated. So Portuguese is the second most commonly spoken English after English. Second most commonly spoken language after English. And there's around 6,000 speakers, and unsurprisingly, so Davenport is actually home to Toronto's Little Portugal, and actually Councillor Bila herself is of Portuguese descent, so that is reflected right there. So this is actually great if you want to run for city council next year. You get a breakdown of all the quick demographics, and you can decide, which ward to run in, right, based on all of this information, depending on who you're trying to connect to. Okay, so now let's try selecting a committee. Make sure that all the other drop-downs, all the other selections are clear. Let's try choosing Board of Health, which is one of the committees in the City of Toronto. So here it shows you all the city councillors who sit on this committee. There are 5 of them. I know the icons are kind of small, but if you hover over on it, you'll see the councillors. So we have Councillor Joe Cressy from Trinity's Medina. And if you hover on the second one, it's Councillor Mahavik from St. Paul. And there's 3 more councillors. I think it's I can't see Jenna Davis. I forgot. But anyway. Great. So I know you guys are very data-driven. You guys are tech experts, so you are probably interested in knowing what's going on behind the scenes and how I built this. Right. So let's get into it. So the tool that I've used is Tableau. It is a data visualization software, and essentially it's just drag and drop, which is really, really easy to use and allows you to aggregate data from multiple sources, such as Excel, or you can connect it to a live database. It's very versatile in that sense. Great. So this is what it looks like when you open up Tableau, and this is just one of many worksheets I was working on, so I was working on this word map. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have all the parameters categorized into either dimensions, which are qualitative attributes, or measures, which are quantitative attributes. So an example of dimensions would be, the top 5 languages in the world, right? Like there could be English, French, Japanese, Mandarin, and these are not numbers, so you cannot use aggregate functions on them. Whereas measures are quantitative attributes, such as the population, number of speakers for each language. These are things that you can actually use aggregate functions, such as sum, average, maximum, minimum, etc. You can actually aggregate that data. And what you do is essentially you just drag and drop these attributes to the columns and rows here. And column is what shows up on the x-axis, and rows is what shows up on the y-axis. So in this case, we have longitude on columns and latitude in rows. So that's how we plotted the graph. And here you see filters and marks. So what filters is, essentially it filters out, it allows you to choose the range of values that you want to retain for your data set. And you can choose to filter out certain values. And marks configures the properties of the presentation of your data. So what color you want to apply to it, what shapes, how you want to present it, what do you want to add or include in your tooltip. And on the top right-hand side, that's a really useful tool. So the Show Me tab allows you to quickly choose a data visualization to apply to your dashboard. And a dashboard is essentially an assembly of different components built from different worksheets. So as you can see, this dashboard is built from many, many different worksheets and combined together. So the map itself was a worksheet that I built separately, and this was a separate worksheet, and this was a separate worksheet, and so was this. And I sort of just added all these different worksheets and the different components to the dashboard, and that's how I built this. It's very time consuming. Okay, so the data that I used was City of Toronto's open data. And so the first source that I used was the awards map, which is provided in the form of shapefiles. And this is the website where I literally pulled the data from. I just downloaded May 2010 awards boundaries. So you can also go on this website and you can download the shapefiles. So a brief note about shapefiles. So Esri is I believe is the governing body that developed shapefiles. They are a special format for spatial geometry. So there are 3 mandatory files that you must include in a shapefile. So it's .shp, which is the main file containing information about the shape. .shx is an index file that speeds up seeking. So seeking is a computer term that allows you to go back and forth. And .dbf, it's like a D-based sort of file, like attribute file. This is sort of like metadata. So you need all 3 files to be able to import that data and represent it as a polygon in Tableau. So let's talk about how shapefiles work and the basic principles behind it, because it is kind of an enigma to most of us. So essentially how it works is you have a bunch of different vertices, right? And each vertex has a longitude and latitude. And then you must define a drawing order. So the order in which you connect these vertices define how your polygon is going to be drawn. And then I had to convert these shapefiles into what's called a Tableau data extract, because shapefiles cannot be processed by Tableau, so you have to convert it into a tabular format, something similar to Excel or CSV file that can be ingested by Tableau. So the second data source that I used was the work profiles, which is the 2011 census. So right here, also pulled straight from the City of Toronto's website. Now this one is a bunch of Excel sheets like this. So they've got several worksheets, and now you're seeing total population by each group. I actually used this data to create that colorful band that you saw in the dashboard earlier. So one of my greatest challenges was dealing with the data size. So just a wild guess right here. Okay, how many rows of data do you think I had in my data set, like in total? Wild guess. Anyone? Millions, correct. And how many millions? 20 million. Okay, yeah. So yeah. Okay, are we doing like an auction? Okay. So so any other guesses? 20 million. 20.5 million. It just goes up further. Any other guesses? Wild guesses? No? Okay, so it's actually not that many. I was hoping. So actually, interestingly enough, I asked Matt Elliott from Metro Toronto. He's a columnist with Metro at the newspaper, and I asked him like, "Hey, Matt, how many rows of data do you think I had?" And he said 600. And I'm like, "Nope, you're way off." So I actually started with 9 million rows of data. And I was like, wait, this is too much data. And it was really slow. And like my Tableau was taking like 5 minutes to render every single time I made a change. It was really annoying. So then I managed to compress it down to 1.5 million. And I was like, wait, still not satisfied. It's still a lot of data. And eventually I got it down to 770K rows of data. That's still a lot, but it's much, much better than 9 million. So you're probably wondering how and why, like where did I get all this data from, right? And why is it in millions? Why is it not in the thousands or hundreds? Okay, I'm gonna actually show you exactly why it's in the millions. So suppose that I have this single data point, right? Which plots a single vertex on that map that I showed you earlier, like a single point, single vertex. So let's say there's a longitude, latitude, and it belongs to Ward 1, and the councillor is Vincent Crisanti. So if I were to join this data set with a disparate data set, like another data set, committee, eventually the number of data points is multiplied by 2. So let's say Crisanti sits on 2 committees, East York Community Council and Government Management. Then I have to essentially duplicate everything else just to accommodate that one extra committee. Now, imagine I joined it with another attribute, such as language is spoken in his ward. Then that, let's suppose there are 3 languages. Then that essentially makes the number of rows 6-fold. And now you see how data can multiply really quickly when you start joining data sets, right? So, if we do the math, there's 44 words roughly, 500 vertices for each word, like if we were to draw the polygon, the boundaries of that word. And each councillor sits on roughly 7 committees, and I have to do the top 5 languages for each ward, so that comes down to 770,000. Yes, that's a lot. Great. So the question, yes? Okay, good question. How did I compress? So I couldn't compress this part, I could not compress this part, I could not compress this part. This is what I compressed. So eventually, instead of showing top 5 languages, I showed like 30-something languages. And then I went down to 10 languages, and then I did top 5 because it was just, that last multiplier significantly reduced the number of rows I had. So you have to make compromises, right, when you're making a dashboard. So you trade that for speed. Okay, so the question goes, what else can we use open data for? And the answer is really the sky's the limit. You can use it for so many different things. You can use it to plot affordable housing, buy claims, election data, right? Like votes by polls. All this data is available on the website. Also parks, traffic, water quality. So I want to take a brief moment to talk about why data visualization is so useful. So the first thing is that data visualization, like Tableau dashboard, allows us to aggregate data from different sources that would otherwise be present in like 10 different Excel worksheets. And now with the power of data visualization, you're able to see it all in one single glance. And the second thing is that data in its crude form cannot be digested or internalized in a meaningful way. But when presented using data visualization, it gives us the ability to tell new stories, uncover new patterns, And now we're equipped with the capacity to qualify and quantify a lot of the claims made by politicians and hold them to account. So if you plot the number of bikes in a city on a map, perhaps you will notice that, oh, there's a road with excessive bike traffic. Then you can propose to your city council that maybe we should add more bike lanes on this road, right? Or if you notice that there's a certain area, like if you plot on a map and you notice that there's a certain area with unusually high pedestrian injuries and deaths, then perhaps you can propose to your city councilor to add a few speed bumps on the streets in that area. So now you see that this is very useful. So one point I want to stress here is that we want to argue based on facts and not emotions, and too often we're swayed into decisions that we later regret. And this is why it's so important to encourage the use of data and open data to drive evidence-based policies. Right? We want to make sure that the urban planning decisions that we make is grounded in facts and numbers. So, next year is going to be a very critical year. Does anybody know why? Excellent. So there's going to be 2 elections next year. First, a provincial election, and then a municipal election. And if you don't know who your MPP or city councillor is, now is the time to find out, because they're making extremely important decisions on behalf of you. And you should definitely get involved and make sure that your voice is being reflected in their decision making. Perhaps you can build a dashboard to demonstrate to them what our community needs the most and help influence them to drive those policy changes that are desperately needed. Thank you.